The first $100,000 is going to be the absolute worst financial experience of your life. It is going to feel like you are pushing a stalled car up a muddy hill in the rain while your friends drive past you in leased BMWs. The math is rigged against you. The psychology is designed to make you quit. And statistically, most people do quit somewhere around the $40,000 mark because the results just do not seem worth the sacrifice. But here is the secret that wealthy people know but rarely explain clearly. Once you get that car to the top of the hill, gravity takes over. The math flips. Suddenly, the car starts rolling down the other side, and you are not pushing anymore. You are just steering. Today, we are breaking down the brutal math of the first 100,000. Why it is so much harder than the second or third, and the specific 2026 blueprint to survive the grind without losing your mind. If you are currently sitting on $5,000, or maybe $20,000, and you feel like your net worth is barely moving despite working overtime, this video is for you. We are going to look at the updated numbers for 2026, because higher interest rates have changed the playbook slightly, but the physics remain the same. I want to show you exactly how long this takes, where the trapdoors are, and why hitting that six-figure milestone is the only financial goal that actually matters right now. If you get value out of deep dives like this, do me a favor and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that we prefer spreadsheets over hype. Let's get into the numbers. You have probably heard the Charlie Munger line. He famously said that the first 100,000 is a female dog, though he used the actual word. He said, "I do not care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that was not purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas." It is a great quote. It gets tossed around on Twitter and Reddit constantly. But when you are actually living through it, that quote can feel incredibly dismissive. It is easy for a billionaire to tell you to walk to work. It is much harder to actually do it when it is raining and you are tired. The reason this quote persists, however, is not because Munger was out of touch. It is because he understood the mathematical threshold where compounding actually starts to matter. Let's strip this down to the basics to see why he was right. When you are starting from zero, your investment returns are mathematically irrelevant compared to your savings rate. If you have $1,000 invested and the market rips higher by 10% in a single year, which is a fantastic year, you made $100. That is one nice dinner. It does not change your life. It barely pays your phone bill for a month. In the early days, 100% of your progress comes from your own labor. You are trading hours for dollars, and then not spending those dollars. There is no passive income yet. There is no money working for you while you sleep. There is just you working while you are awake. That is why it feels like a grind. You are doing all the heavy lifting, and the portfolio is just sitting there, barely helping. This leads to a specific psychological trap. Because the returns are so small in absolute dollars, it is very easy to become cynical about investing. You look at your account after a year of discipline. You skimped on groceries, you drove the old car, you skipped the vacation. And what do you see? You see the money you put in, plus maybe $300 of growth. It feels insulting. You start thinking, why am I suffering this much for $300? I could have just picked up one extra shift at work and made that money. This is the moment where most people break. They calculate the sacrifice against the immediate return and decide the game isn't worth playing. They don't realize that they aren't investing for the return they get today. They are investing to build the base that will generate returns 10 years from now. So, the protocol for this first phase is what I call brute force. You have to accept that you cannot invest your way out of the first 100,000. You have to save your way out of it. Your asset allocation matters less than your savings rate. Whether you pick an S&P 500 fund or a total world fund matters less than whether you spend $500 on a car payment. The strategy here is to focus entirely on the gap between your income and your expenses. Munger's advice about coupons wasn't really about the price of pasta. It was about the intensity required to bridge that gap. You need to be aggressive with your savings rate because that is the only engine you have. The market is not an engine yet. It is just a parking spot. Now, you might be thinking, Tom, this is fine for average earners, but I make a good salary, so I can skip this grind. Actually, high earners are often the ones who fail this test the hardest. I have seen people making $200,000 a year who cannot scrape together 50 grand in liquid assets. Why? Because they assume their high income is the wealth. It isn't. High income just makes the car heavier to push if you bloat your lifestyle to match it. Before we look at the exact timeline of how long this takes, we need to address the income trap. Let's run a realistic scenario for 2026. We are going to assume you are debt-free, or at least free of high-interest consumer debt, and you are ready to build. Let's say you can squeeze out $833 a month. That is $10,000 a year. For many people, that is a huge stretch. For others, it's a baseline. We will assume a 7% annualized return, which is a fair historical average for a diversified stock portfolio after inflation. If you stick to this, hitting that first $100,000 will take you roughly 7.8 years. Nearly 8 years. That is a long time. That is almost a decade of your life where you are consistently putting money away and not touching it. It is long enough to lose motivation, change jobs 3 times, and move houses twice. Here is the part of that 7.8 years that hurts the most. In that time, you will have contributed about $78,000 of your own hard-earned cash. The investment growth? That is only about $22,000. Think about that ratio. Roughly 75 to 80% of your net worth came from your paycheck. Only 20 to 25% came from the market. This is what I mean by the grind. You are doing 3/4 of the work. You are the one skipping dinner out. You are the one driving the 2012 Honda. The market is just chipping in a little bit at the end. Visually, if you look at a bar chart of your progress, the contribution bar is massive and the interest bar is a tiny sliver on top. This is the valley of disappointment. But before you get discouraged, let's look at the alternative. What if you don't invest? What if you just stuff cash under the mattress because the market feels risky? If you save that same $10,000 a year with 0 interest, it takes you exactly 10 years. You might say, well, Tom, 7.8 years versus 10 years isn't a massive difference. It's only 2 years. Is it really worth the market risk? Yes, because those 2 years are not just time, they are the foundation of exponential growth. If you take the 0 interest route, year 11 looks exactly like year 1. You are still pushing the car. If you take the investing route, year 11 is where the engine starts to roar. The tragedy isn't that investing takes 8 years to work. The tragedy is that saving without investing takes forever. So, how do we speed this up? You really only have 2 levers: amount and return. Since we can't control the market return, we have to control the amount. If you can bump that savings up to $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year, the timeline drops to under 5 years. 5 years is manageable. 5 years is a stint in college or a single military contract. If you can find a way to live on half your income or pick up a side hustle that goes 100% into the portfolio, you can cross this desert in 3 to 4 years. The protocol here is to realize that time in the market is great, but money in the market is better. In the early stages, adding an extra $500 a month is more powerful than picking a stock that outperforms by 2%. This is usually the part of the video where I tell you to be patient. But I don't want you to be patient. I want you to be impatient. Because once you cross that $100,000 line, the rules of physics change in a way that is almost impossible to believe until you see it in your own account. If you stop at 90,000 because you are tired of the grind, you are quitting right before the magic trick happens. Let me show you what happens to your money the day you cross 6 figures. The second $100,000 is a completely different game. It is not a grind, it is a collaboration between you and your money. Let's go back to our math. You have 100,000 invested. The market has a standard good year and goes up 10%. That is a $10,000 gain. That is your entire annual contribution from the previous example, generated without you lifting a finger. Suddenly, you have 2 workers on the job, you earning your salary and your portfolio earning its return. They are now contributing equally. This is the moment your financial life changes. You are no longer the sole provider for your future self. Let's look at the timeline again. It took 7.8 years to get the first 100,000. Staying with the same contributions, 10,000 a year, and the same 7% return, the second 100,000 takes only about 5 years. You just shaved almost 3 years off the process. Why? Because you are starting with a base that is generating $7,000 a year in growth on day 1. You are effectively saving $17,000 a year, even though only $10,000 is coming from your paycheck. The third 100,000? That takes about 3.5 years. The fourth? 2.5 years. The time between milestones collapses. This is the snowball effect in action. It's not just a metaphor. It is the mathematical inevitability of compound interest on a significant base. I want you to visualize this as 2 timelines stacked on top of each other. The top timeline is the first 100 grand. It is long, slow, and mostly filled with blue blocks representing your contributions. The bottom timeline is the next 100 grand. It is compressed, it is shorter, and the green blocks, representing growth, are suddenly huge. They are taking up half the space. This is why the rich get richer. It isn't because they are smarter or because they have secret insider tips. It is because they have a massive base that compounds faster than they can spend it. When you have $1 million, a 7% year is $70,000. That is a median household salary, generated automatically. But you cannot get to the million without surviving the first 100,000. Now Munger said after the first 100 grand, you can ease off the gas. I want to nuance that. You can ease off, but you shouldn't. If you keep the pedal down, if you keep your lifestyle low and your savings high, even after you cross 6 figures, that is when you reach escape velocity. If you immediately celebrate hitting 100,000 by buying a $50,000 car, you are effectively driving your portfolio back down to 50,000 and restarting the grind. The goal is to let the snowball get big enough that it can survive you taking some snow off the top later. Don't melt the snowball just because you've finally made it. There is one major difference between doing this today versus doing it in 2015, and it actually helps you. For the last decade, cash was trash. If you kept money in a savings account, you were losing money to inflation. In 2026, the rate environment is different. We need to talk about how high-yield cash plays a role in this grind and why your emergency fund is suddenly pulling its own weight. In the zero interest rate era, your emergency fund was dead weight. It sat there earning 0.01% while inflation ate it alive. Today, with rates hovering higher, your cash reserves can actually generate a meaningful return. If you have $20,000 in a high-yield savings account or a money market fund earning 4 or 5%, that is $800 to $1,000 a year in risk-free interest. That is not nothing. It essentially covers a bill or two. This psychological win is important. It means even your safety net is contributing to the compounding. It reduces the cash drag on your portfolio. However, we have to look at the other side of the coin: inflation. $100,000 in 2026 does not buy what $100,000 bought in 2016. In purchasing power terms, you might need closer to $130,000 to feel the same level of security. This is the moving goalpost problem. Just as you get close to the finish line, inflation pushes it back. This is why you cannot rely solely on cash, even with good rates. 5% interest minus 3% inflation is only a 2% real return. Stocks, real estate, and owning businesses are still the only reliable ways to beat inflation over long periods by a wide enough margin to build wealth. So, the 2026 blueprint requires a slight adjustment. You still need that first $100,000 invested, but you need to be smarter about where you keep your liquidity. Do not leave your savings in a traditional checking account. That is financial negligence. Ensure every dollar that isn't in the market is in a high-yield environment. And psychologically, you might need to aim slightly higher. Maybe your mental milestone needs to be $125,000 to get the same "I'm safe" feeling that Munger was talking about. But the principle remains: get to the first 6 figures of liquid assets and the options open up. Do not let the inflation numbers discourage you. I see people say, "Why save? Inflation eats it anyway." That is the loser's mindset. Inflation hurts savers, but it destroys non-savers. If you have 0 assets, inflation means you just get poorer every year. If you have assets, they tend to inflate along with prices over time. The goal of the first 100,000 is to buy your ticket onto the train that is moving with the economy, rather than standing on the tracks and getting run over by it. You are building a hedge against the future. We need to talk about the boring middle. This is the phase between $10,000 and $70,000. The excitement of starting is gone. The finish line is not visible yet. You are just saving. This is where lifestyle creep tries to kill you. You get a raise and you think, "I deserve a better apartment." No, you don't. Not yet. You deserve financial freedom, and the better apartment is the enemy of that freedom. The protocol here is automated scarcity. Set up your automatic transfers to occur the day after payday. Make yourself feel broke in your checking account, so you aren't tempted to spend the surplus. Since the investment returns are boring right now, you have to gamify the savings. Track your savings rate, not your investment performance. If you saved 20% of your income last month, try for 21% this month. Treat it like a high score. Celebrate the contributions. When you hit 25,000, celebrate. When you hit 50,000, celebrate. Break the big mountain down into base camps. If you only look at the peak, you will get vertigo. If you look at your feet and just take the next step, you will eventually look up and realize you are halfway there. I want to leave you with this thought. The first $100,000 is not just about money. It is about proving to yourself that you can control your impulses for a sustained period of time. It is a test of character as much as it is a test of math. Once you pass that test, the money becomes easier because you have become better. You are no longer the person who spends everything they earn. You are a capital allocator. The grind is temporary. The freedom it buys you is permanent. So, put your head down. Embrace the suck. Drive the old car. Cook the pasta at home. Push that car up the hill 1 inch at a time. Because I promise you, the ride down the other side is worth every second of the struggle. I want to hear from you in the comments. Where are you on this timeline? Are you in the first 10,000? Are you stuck in the boring middle at 50? Or have you crossed the 100 mark and felt that shift in gravity? Share your numbers and your struggles. It helps everyone else realize they aren't the only ones pushing that car in the rain. And if you found this breakdown helpful, like the video so it reaches more people trying to figure this out. I'll see you in the next one.